people who have not made peace with their life fear death. So obviously in my work with folks, doing so much trauma work, death happens all the time. It's either anticipated or it's sudden. And so much a part of life is really reconciling with death. And it's the great equalizer, because we know it's going to happen to all of us. And so some people fear it, some people try to avoid it. And part of my kind of hope, wish, prayer is that I can help people prepare for it and embrace it.
Embrace it. You said that you love death.
I do.
How do you grow to love the end of yourself? I mean, because when I think about death, I think about the end of our life, like everything I've known up to this point. Isn't that sad?
Yes and no, right? Because if you see it as the end, stop, then I do think there's a lot of sadness. I find if we can look at the permanent impermanence of death. So, random shift.
Yeah.
Seasonally, right?
Mm-hmm.
I used to hate winter. It seemed bleak. It seemed, as I look out the window right now, ugly. And yet now I find beauty in the bare trees, in the branches, in those leaves right now that are still hanging on a bit. Mm. And when I'm in my office and look out the window and I see this bright red cardinal, right? So I think death, as we're facing it, can clear things away and bring out more clarity to things, and again, I think it then gives us the opportunity to reflect and to make meaning, right? Because death happens, because it exists, it actually creates this finite nature of life, mm-hmm. which I think then creates the preciousness of life. Because if we didn't have death, it wouldn't be finite,
yeah,
and it wouldn't be as significant because it's a finite resource. Life is a finite resource, and we don't know when it's going to happen. Like we don't get to choose what ticket we're going to punch, but we know that it's the great equalizer because it's going to happen to all of us.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm in my mid-20s now, mm-hmm. and so I have a lot of friends who are just graduating from college and things like that, and they have their life plan. I want to do this with my life, mm-hmm. and they'll go through, I want to do this and this and this and this. And when I sit and listen to them, I have this strange intuition, like something's missing. And I realize that they're not planning for their death. Mm. So one of my favorite questions to ask people when they tell me about their plans for their life, like, I want to do this, I want to have a family, I want to have a career like this, or whatever it is. I always love to ask them, how do you want to die? Mm-hmm. What do you want it to be like when you pass away? Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how almost no one's thought about that.
Right. And I took a death and dying class in social work, mm-hmm. and it was an excellent class. And we had to write our own death, like our own, if you will, obituary.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the professor, Lan Thompson, saying, everybody wrote a good death, right? So all of us, you're in a hospital bed or you're in your home and you're surrounded by loved ones. And that's really, if you will, the idyllic version of death. Mm-hmm. And yet, again, as a trauma therapist and you as a therapist, and you're going to be sitting with more people who have experienced traumatic death or untimely death or death, that should not developmentally happen. Like no parent should bury their child at any age.
Or at least that's what we've decided.
Yeah, exactly. But it's how do you, again, wrestle with that, because we don't get to decide. We don't get to say, okay, I want I mean, we can say it, but it may not happen, right?
Yeah, we can ask nicely.
Exactly. I did when I was at my father's side when he passed, but the night before, he passed away at 81, 3 days shy of his 81st birthday, actually. But he had been mostly quiet that day, and in hospice they brought in a harpist, and so
That's awesome.
It was beautiful.
Like your own personal harpist?
Yeah, they send somebody in, and my mom was there, and some of my siblings were there, and other family. And I think there was maybe just, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 of us. And again, he had been largely non-responsive that day. And when she started playing Amazing Grace, he came up out of his hospital bed and began mouthing the words as she was playing. And in that moment, especially as a woman of faith, I thought, I am beginning to watch his soul ascend. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And so I told everybody in that moment, I put in my order to God and said, that's how I want to go. But because I sit with so many people of faith and non-faith, I mean, and hear of stories and tragedies and pain of death that comes not in that, again, idealized way. It's we need to prepare. We need to know, right? It's going to happen to all of us, but there was such beauty in that, there was such beauty. And then I remember the moment when he passed. I was in there by myself with him, and it was poignant and painful, right? Because it's not without sadness, because people have imprinted us, right? Yeah. And the imprint that my dad left on me, and I was actually with my mom at her side too when she passed. For me, that's an honor, because they live in Pennsylvania, I live here, and so for decades I thought there's a good chance that I may not be with my parents when they pass. But yeah, I just felt like it was an honor. So
yeah. It's funny. My first experience with death, probably my first experience was like a pet. My hamster who gets out of the cage or whatever. And you're like, oh. And the parents are like, oh, he's out on a farm somewhere. He's sleeping or whatever.
Right.
And then they flush the fish down the toilet or whatever it is.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, they can be so different. Like my first real experience of death was probably my own mother. Because she had been battling cancer from the time that I was around 8 years old to around 12 years old. And I remember she had been sick for a long time. Her body swelled up as part of the chemo, and her hair fell out. So she looked really different than the way I remembered her. And I was picked up early from school one day by my sister. And when we got to the hospital, she had already passed away. And so my family was just there surrounding her. And she looked almost unrecognizable, so different than she used to look. And that was the first time that I really came face to face with death. I was 12 years old. And it was really hard. It was tragic. And I always thought after that experience that I'd hate death. There would be something that I couldn't, bear to live with. It's this tragic, horrible thing. But I got an experience when I was older and I was in college. I actually got to live in a mortuary. And not a lot of people know this, but they have these deals worked out with mortuaries where they'll hire a young couple to live in the mortuary. There's an apartment area.
Really?
Yeah.
And this is in Utah?
Yeah, I was doing my undergrad in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And they'll hire a young couple to live there. And if someone passes away outside of working hours, so between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. the next day, you call up a mortician who's on call and you help him gather the dead to bring them back. And I think one of the things I had thought was that my experience with death was unique. It was uniquely horrible. It was uniquely tragic. But I think what I learned going into people's homes and picking up loved ones is that my experience wasn't as unique as I thought. And the more I was surrounded by people who had passed away, the more I physically interacted with their remains and helped the families and consoled them, the more I realized, hey, this is a fact of life. And I was almost grateful that I learned about it when I was 12. It completely changed my perspective on how I felt about it earlier.
I'm curious, how did the people around you when you were 12 help you process or make meaning of your mom's death?
That's such a good question. So I grew up very religious, LDS or Mormon, and we believe in eternal families. So we believe, unlike a lot of other Christian faiths, that your whole family, if you're sealed together in the temple, goes with you to heaven. So I was told explicitly, not only will we see your mom again, but your mom will still be your mom in heaven. You still get to be her son in heaven. So death is really just a stepping stone, like, going from, the sixth grade to the seventh grade, going to junior high school, and that there's still a lot more to do in heaven. I don't know that I believed that when I was 12. My favorite reaction was the people who had no idea what to say. They were like, well, she'd be real proud of you, sport. Like I'd accomplish something, I'd get a good grade, and some guy would come over, a family friend, and be like, oh, your mom would be real proud of you. And I was like, can I just do something without you reminding me of my dead mom? I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of funny memories of people acting that way too. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there are a lot of people in my life who tried to help, but it really seemed like we didn't have a unified message or idea of what death was like. And there were a lot of people who, like you said, weren't actually at peace with it.
Well, and again, if we view death as a season, like once we know that after winter, spring comes. Right. And so, for those of us of a faith that believe in an afterlife, or, some faiths believe in reincarnation, or, just that it's not final. Life goes on. And obviously in our counseling and clinical world, we talk about post-traumatic growth. And the research around that, which I love whenever I dug into it, was, or is, out of suffering can come great good. So we have the unique opportunity to work and walk with people around death to extend their sense of finality. When I work with folks, especially survivors of suicide loss, and more recently I had an opportunity to talk with a youth group actually at an Islamic mosque around death, around grief. But we are uniquely then positioned to extend the life of our loved ones in the world, right? So
extend the life of our loved ones in the world.
Yes. So I had a conflicted relationship with my mom when she was young, when I was younger. She's a recovering alcoholic and suffered with anxiety and depression her whole life. And as a teenager, actually my very simplistic solution, because I felt like she made everybody's world miserable, was I shared this with my mom before she passed at 83. And I basically wanted God to extract her from life. I'm like, if you just remove her from life, like take her now, we can grieve and move on.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. And so I had the opportunity to kind of wrestle through that relationship and develop into just a fondness and a loving endearment for my mom. And early on, I used to say that my mom, that she made me the therapist that I am today.
Yeah.
And I used to say that humorously. And then there was a time probably when I said that vindictively.
Yeah.
And now I say that with great appreciation for
earnestly.
her. And so when I am generous, because she was very generous, so when I am generous and I intentionally go, okay, this is my mom's energy, like I'm extending this in the world. And I believe that the work that I am poised to do, especially, one of my specialties is working with anxiety, that was a direct imprint and influence in my mom. And I get to pay honor to her because I used to not understand it. I used to dismiss it. And I was also very belligerent with her
Yeah.
Like, well, this is stupid, because she thought every time I left the house as a teenager, I was going to end up in a ditch dead, of which I had no appreciation for other than, you're stupid, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it didn't, right?
So you were right.
Yeah, right. I was right.
Not to do it.
Right. But I didn't realize I came from a place of suffering, because with her generalized anxiety disorder, again, we know that people, the lens they look at is like, catastrophe is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I came to a much greater compassion for her and her suffering. And so now, every time I sit with clients in the 12-step program, when somebody gets into recovery and then they see other people who are still struggling with alcoholism or drug addiction, they say, but there for the grace of God go I.
Right.
And so when I'm sitting with clients and I see that they are still suffering with anxiety, I'm like, but there for the grace of God go I. Like, I can offer them what I was, as an adolescent, unable to offer my mother: compassion, understanding, support. And again, my mom always feared death. She worried about people dying. She worried about bad things happening. That tormented her through life. Right?
Yeah.
So I think we can come full circle and then, again, extend the loved one, their essence, in the world.
Yeah. I love what you say about extending them, because to me that feels different than describing what it's like after death, as if we know, right? As if we have firsthand experience.
Right.
Well, I, as a person of faith, or someone who's worked with people who've died, I have like some special knowledge. I don't really think that's what it's like, but there was something. I got the opportunity to be in a very intimate setting when I picked up the dead. I went into their homes. Sometimes you go into hospitals, and sometimes you go into their homes. So I got to see how everything was organized. I got to be there with the family in those final moments, or I suppose after the final moments. And I noticed something really interesting. There was a stark difference between people who were surrounded by friends and loved ones. So sometimes I'd walk into a house and it would be bright, and it would be full of people, hustle and bustle, adults and children. And, the little children would be laughing and playing because they're 4 or 5 and they don't understand what's going on. And sometimes I'd go into houses where it was dark and the lights were dim, and there'd maybe be 1 or 2 people there. And the difference between those things, when I was in those darker houses, it really felt like the person passed away, like completely, and it was the end.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I felt like when I was 12. But then when I was in the house full of people, friends and families and loved ones, it's as if they didn't pass away, because they were gone, but their children were there, and their grandchildren were there, and friends and families and aunts and uncles and cousins. And it's almost like they lived through them. Like you said, they extended the person's life. And to me, in that room, in a way I couldn't explain, it felt like they were never going to die. Like they had eternal life. Yeah. And I can't describe what it is, but that's what it felt like.
And maybe, I'd never thought of it in that way, but maybe that is what we mean by eternal life. Obviously, from a faith perspective, many of us imagine, being up in heaven, or however you describe it. But
yeah, like maybe, a physical place.
Yeah, but maybe the eternal life is just your memory is living on. The spirit of your soul, in terms of, were you a gregarious person or a generous person or a recovering person or whatever, is living on through other people. I worked with this one young woman whose sibling died by suicide, and clearly she was bereft. I mean, I work with a lot of people who have experienced tragic death, and that is different than a good death, right?
Yeah.
Even though
they're not the same.
Yeah. Even though, my mom had a fall at 83, suffered a subdural hematoma on a Thursday, and then died on Sunday. I still view that as a good death, because of just the nature of, she lived a complete, full life. She lived a legacy left a legacy with all of us. But this young woman, when she was having a hard time just thinking of the finality of her sibling, and I said, well, what are some things that you associate with your loved one? And she said Dove chocolates. She would always give Dove chocolates out. And so one thing that I think working through death also requires is movement. Because, the heaviness that can be associated with grief and the depression just begins to shut us down. And that's a moment. That's Kubler-Ross, it's definitely one of those stages of grief and loss. But if we can move things along, and so I encouraged her to get a bag of Dove chocolates and just leave them places for people. So that her intention is, I'm extending my loved one. And I had another young man who also lost a sibling from suicide. And immediately what he did was made a list of, like a bucket list of all these things he associated with his brother, which included wearing a fedora and writing rap songs and all of these other things. And he wrote down the number of, I believe it was 24, which is how old his brother was when he died. And so he has continued to intentionally and if you will, systematically do those things as a way to stay connected. Because, again, Tuesdays with Morrie is one of my favorite books and just a great movie. Mitch Albom writes beautifully about all types of aspects of death. Yeah. But Morrie basically says death ends a life, not a relationship. And so the relationship we have with our loved one, even though they are no longer here on earth, because they're not here in our solid form, oftentimes I'll say to folks that, especially if somebody does not come from a faith perspective. Yeah. Because a lot of times it can be really difficult for somebody if they're agnostic or atheist. And I go, well, the law of conservation of energy and mass is that energy can be neither gained nor lost. It can only be transformed. And so if you think about water, that is liquid. And then you have ice in its solid form, and then you have vapor. And in my simplistic mind, we have our loved ones in the solid ice form, but when they move on, their energy becomes vapor. And for me, that's the soul and the spirit. So I can still feel that. And coming up soon is an anniversary date of my spiritual director, Sister Connie Kramer. And she was a grief expert, and I had just an honor to interview her and do a StoryCorps interview with her 2 months before she passed, because she found out she had a glioblastoma. And one of the things that she said, because I learned a lot from her in a short amount of time, is that she maintains that death and grief is our greatest teacher in life. It's the greatest gift from God, because I think it gives us the opportunity to create those relationships and make them meaningful, and then, again, extend them beyond when we are no longer present in our human form. And I asked her, I go, so how will I know, and this is in the StoryCorps interview, I'm like, how will I know when, you're there present? And she's like, you just ask when you say, okay, Sister Connie, what, and I'll say, be kind to yourself. When you hear that, that's me. So I hear her a lot. And she's with me, and I carry her. And she was so excited when I asked her about doing this StoryCorps interview with her. Because it's a way her wisdom gets to live on. I wanted to preserve that for people, because she was so profoundly impactful in my life, So we laughed together, we cried together, we hugged, we prayed. So, So I'm thrilled that she gets to live on. People get to experience her, get to hear her voice. When went to her funeral services. I actually got to meet, she's a Sisters of Providence down in Terre Haute. And so I was doing actually Sundays with sister visits, just like Tuesdays with Maury.
Yeah.
And
Sundays with sisters.
yeah, right. Yeah. And so I got to meet some of her family, and some of them hadn't heard the interview. And so I shared that with them, and they're like, it was so lovely to hear Aunt Connie's voice, right? Because now it is preserved. And her wisdom. So when I'm working with people who are grieving or are wrestling with issues around death and grief and loss, I go, here, I want you to listen to this. Just, and again, in all things in life, take what you like and leave the rest, right?
Yeah.
Something will resonate with you, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's amazing to think about. It's like through you and the amazing experiences I've had with you, I got to know a little bit of Sister Connie. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know it. Yeah. I think she is living forever.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful human.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for listening.
Should probably turn it off before we start crying. Huh?
Yeah. So before we do that, I'll close with this because how
I'll put it together. Okay.
Well, I might. So that I always have a poem, a quote, a movie recommendation, a book, but this was a poem that I was in college when I first read this. And for me, this is the permanent impermanence of relationship and connection. Mm-hmm. So we'll just wrap this up. And as it reads, it sounds as though somebody is present in your life. But I find even if we've lost somebody, it's relevant. So it's a poem by Larry Chengiz called A Part of You, A Part of Me. Every moment that we are together, I'm learning something. And that knowledge becomes a permanent part of me. Though my feelings will be different a year from now or 10 years from now, part of the difference is you. Because of you, I'm a different person. And the person I will grow to become with or without you by my side, will have gotten there, partly because of you. If you are not in my life right now, I could not be who I am right now, nor would I be growing in exactly the same way. Much of what I grow toward and change within myself has to do with what I respond to in you, what I learn from you, and what I understand about myself through you, and what I learn about my feelings in the dynamics of our relationship. I do not worry about our future together, since we have already touched each other and affected each other's lives on so many levels that we can never be totally removed from each other's thoughts. A part of you will always be me, and a part of me will always be you. That much is certain, no matter what else happens.